now listening to Protecting Your Nest with board-certified family medicine and obesity medicine specialist Dr. Tony Hampton. For more, visit drtonyhampton.com. Welcome to the Protecting Your Nest podcast. Today, I want to continue our conversation about low-carb and keto by asking today's guest about how low-carb and keto has changed her life. Additionally, I thought it would be fun to hear her thoughts about an article I read from 2019 by a nutritionist by the name of Lisa Kilger, entitled 5 Reasons Why I'm Afraid of the Keto Diet. She wrote the article because all the fad diets she looked at, she calls keto fad, the keto diet was the one that worried her the most. She believes its popularity is due to the fact that keto sells products, videos, articles, books, and is great clickbait, which is very interesting. In her article, she mentions that, quote, "I'm frustrated that the perils of the keto diet have been missing so far, and no one seems to be talking about the issues with keto, and there are so many. This is why I'm afraid of the keto diet." In fact, she says she's terrified. So as we have our conversation with our guest today, we will incorporate the 5 reasons why Lisa is terrified and add some perspective. And I'll be sure to share the link to that article in the podcast notes so you'll get a chance to check it out. Today's guest is DeNitra Davis. She is the co-founder of Nutritional Knowledge, which provides educational services to help prevent, reverse, and decrease the incidence of chronic illnesses. She and her organization believes there's a gap in knowledge that exists, with either a lack of information or a plethora of misinformation. Her aim and the organization's aim is to bridge the knowledge. Simply put, they want you to, know better, so that you could be and would be and should do better. Nutritional knowledge, therefore, is how that title came about, just so you can know what you need to know. She has successfully implemented therapeutic carb restriction to reverse chronic illnesses and health issues in her own life. She endeavors to enjoy others on their journey to optimal health, and she has given sound guidance and direction to others to help improve their health outcomes. I think that's so important because we all need a little help as we are trying to journey through life. She is, an educator with experience in teaching others. She received her education from Union University, her bachelor's degree from Lemoyne Owens College, and has more than 25 years of education experience. I think that's so important because I feel like everything we're doing on this podcast is about teaching. She's an accredited metabolic practitioner with the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners. I also belong to that organization. She recently completed the Nutrition Network Coach Practitioner Certification. She's a keto and carnivore health coach with Keto Adapted, and she lives in Tennessee with her husband and is the mother of 1 son. With that, DeNitra, I really am excited to have you today on the Protecting Your Nest podcast.
Thank you for having me, Tony. So glad to be here and good to see you.
Absolutely. Just as excited. And, having these conversations are so important because there may be someone who will hear your voice. And if they're watching on YouTube, see your image and say, man, I'm just like her. And if DeNitra can do it, I can do it. And I think that's really important. And it's so interesting that the nutrition professional will comment on later. She said keto is about selling products, videos, articles, books, and it's great clickbait. We both know that low carb and keto is so much more than that. And I would argue very few of the things she mentioned in the article are true for us, because I tend to not buy keto products. I tend to, not, do it for that reason. I do it because I see people healing in my practice. So let's introduce you by you introducing my audience to, how I met you. And I think that would be insightful for people to know that.
Absolutely. Thank you. So, yeah, so I initially met you virtually, just on my own journey of, practicing, low carb, and finding, people who are normalizing that, this is indeed a prescription to be able to change your life and, heal your health. And so I was excited when my husband and I attended a conference in Austin, Texas, and there you were. And so you were speaking there. And so I came up like a regular fan and stalker and sought you out and got a chance to meet you and your lovely wife. And then we saw each other again in San Diego at the Society of Metabolic Health Summit as well. So yeah, I still follow you, listen to you on the Monday Night Lives. Um, it's just great to see people normalizing this. Sometimes in my own world, it's like people look like I got three heads.
Right.
If I bring it up, and so I find some safe places in spaces, sometimes virtually. So yeah, that's how we initially met.
Yeah, that's great. And it wasn't just a meeting. We ended up hanging out, going to dinner together, just doing a lot of things that couples do when they travel, and like-minded individuals hang out. So we really appreciate the relationship we've established. Shout out to your husband. Let him know we appreciate him giving you some time for us to record, and
Absolutely.
looking forward to continuing the relationship, the friendship, and it was nice for my wife to have a buddy to hang out with. So thank you for that. And I love how you said earlier, but as you started your comments, a prescription. And I know Dr. Eric Westman always uses the language of therapeutic carb restriction. I know the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners have the guidelines for therapeutic carb restriction. And let's be clear, and I've mentioned this before, that the American Heart Association, when they finally in March of 2022 endorsed low carb and keto, uh, and they may have framed it as very low carb. They said, warning, if you do very low carb, you need to do it safely because it's that effective. Imagine a diet that is so effective that we have to be concerned that your blood sugars may drop too fast, your blood pressure may normalize, and you need to deprescribe medicine. Who knew, right? So it is fair to say it is a prescription. And when and I know, you're supposed to say during a podcast, this is for medical information only. And the reason why that's true is because if you implement some of these changes, and let's just say you're a 300, 400 carb person, and you make these changes, you will need to be careful. So I appreciate the language of prescription, and I think that's absolutely how I look at it. Let's talk a little bit about yourself. How did you discover keto, and the impact it's had on your life personally, and low carb?
Absolutely. Yeah, so on my own journey, while researching for myself, I was diagnosed with some chronic illnesses, had some challenges that I just couldn't understand. At one point, I was diagnosed with lupus by one rheumatologist, connective tissue disease with another rheumatologist, and their prescription for me was, Plaquenil. Um, I was, having skin issues with eczema. My numbers were coming back pre-diabetic. I was, having gout. So all the things, and I lost my sister in 2017 um, with very similar illnesses. And, her prescription from her rheumatologist were the same. So when it came to me, I was like, okay, not doing this, need to figure out something else. So, I tried vegan, vegetarian, now we call it plant-based. And I, was my sickest, I was sicker, trying those things. And so I, just started coming across, articles about, keto, which I can agree with the author about keto. Kind of the term has this fad base, but if you really get an understanding about what it is and what's happening to your body, it's not a fad at all. And I agree with you. Eric Ressman is where I got the name from. I was in his first course called Keto Made Simple,
Mm,
where he uses that term of prescription. And so that, he's one of the first that have, put me on with keto in the sense of it being relative to my health. I remember, back younger, I wanted to lose weight, and I heard about keto, and I did the bars, I did all the things, but it was, Dr. Westman who first, kind of tipped me off to, this is indeed a prescription, and you can't do both. You
hmm
can't do the medicines that they give you and do low carb. One is going to impact the other. So yeah, those were my first initial days. I was hungry for wanting to know ways I could, heal my body, not just lose weight at this point, but heal my body, that didn't require all of these different drugs and prescriptions.
that's cool. When you think about the types of medical conditions that benefit from low carb, keto, or carnivore, you immediately think about autoimmune conditions. For me personally, it was irritable bowel. And no matter what you say about irritable bowel, many believe that there's some autoimmune components to that. So lupus is clearly one of those conditions that benefit. Any type of connective tissue disease is an autoimmune thing. Eczema is probably more about inflammation. Gout is more about inflammation. And so we have a choice in that moment. Now, I consider medicine bridge therapy. So if I hear about Plaquenil, I know that most medicines like that, methotrexate, Plaquenil, they're all about inflammation. So we will benefit sometimes temporarily from using those medicines, but if we help reduce inflammation and not get to the root cause, then we're going to have flare after flare. And what I love about the dietary pattern is that it gets to the root cause. It eliminates the cause of the inflammation. So for anybody checking out this episode, if you have an autoimmune condition, if you have problems with flares of eczema, which is similar, everybody, people with asthma and, allergies, they all are in that same bucket, but it's really inflammation. If you're tired of having gout flares, this is a absolute win. Gout is the only one you want to be cautious about, because as you start your gout journey, you initially may have a spike in uric acid when you start treatment with prescription low carb or keto, because you need to get your body's not used to the ketones, and as the ketones leave your urine, they inhibit uric acid from leaving. So you may have a little. So some people in my practice will ease into low carb or keto, and that way the body has time to adjust. It only takes a couple of weeks. Or they may take a little bit of that allopurinol or something just to kind of keep the uric acid in check. But once you're in a metabolically healthy state with diet, you probably are not going to have gout flares anymore. In fact, when you look at the therapeutic guidelines for carb restriction, they call out gout specifically to remind clinicians that they need to be aware of that. And that's why it's important we have more clinicians who are aware of these little nuances, so that when they're helping patients, they'll be able to help them. And one of the things you mentioned early on, you said keto bars, like low carb bars, right? And even Dr. Eric Westman has with Adapted Life, they do have a quality low carb keto bar. However, he'll tell you you don't need that. But if you want something to kind of have as a snack that's healthy, then it's a good product. So I just think that's important to call out. You don't need it, but if you want it, it's available. So let's talk a little bit about struggles, right? And when I think about life in general is a struggle. We talked about briefly before we started, we kind of talked about relationships struggle. When you talk about raising kids, you have a one baby that you've created struggle. Going to work and dealing with people struggle. When you're trying to coach your clients struggle. If you don't have struggle, you're probably not on the planet. So when it comes to dealing with low carb, um, um, what struggles did you have to overcome in order to be successful with that?
Yeah, so I would say, the struggle for me initially was mindset, just my thought patterns, the things that I had been, so ingrained to think were my main struggles. I couldn't believe that, sugar and carbohydrates, had such a major impact. It for me in my mind, it just had to be something else. It had to be, genetics. It had to be hereditary. It was passed down to me. Is why I got this. And so those were my kind of initial struggles with just my thought process around, I've been eating sugar all my life. As a kid, I, ate sugar. We ate cereal. We ate orange, drank orange juice, and, it didn't seem to be a problem, not really understanding that it was a setup for a later struggle. So yeah, those are some struggles, the things that I have, kind of overcome though, with implementing low carb, adopting and practicing it, those ailments that I spoke about earlier, I mean, they disappeared. I mean, my eczema used to be out of control. I was, getting skin grafts and allergy tests and just all types of stuff, and I just thought it was an external thing. I was staying out of the sun because of eczema. You mentioned earlier about gout. I used to think I couldn't eat shrimp and crab legs, which I really love
Mm,
because of the seafood. I remember like feeling punished because I couldn't have crab legs because that's what causes
mm-hmm,
gout. I was told red meat, don't eat it. That's what causes gout. When ultimately for me, it was the sugar, it was the
mm,
carbs, it was the
mm.
processed foods, it was the nightshade vegetables that ultimately were causing those issues for me. But I just will say, I've released excessive weight. I've reversed prediabetes and ultimately prevented, myself from having diabetes. My autoimmune. I remember the doctor who first diagnosed me, gave me like an ANA assessment. Um, and I asked her, I was like, how long do I have to wait before I come back to see if my ANA is negative? She was like, it'll never be negative. It will, once it's positive, it will always
Mm,
be positive.
mm,
I was like, this sounds like a death sentence.
mm-hmm.
And so, I believed her for about 4 or 5 years, but I was doing so well with low carb that my OBGYN, who is also, a low carb believer, um, I asked her one day, I was like, well, I was told it would never, change again. Would you mind running it, doing this test for me again? And sure enough, it came back negative.
Mm.
And so it just speaks to the value of us changing how we eat. I mean, it's literally this is, self-inflicted, and sometimes it's just unknowing. So that's yeah, those have been my struggles.
Well, I felt like I just went to church. Now I know you teach, but I don't think you preach. I don't think you're a preacher. I'm gonna tell you why I feel that way. Somebody listening to this episode, do you have any idea how much I've struggled with people coming to me with gout, and I'm telling them to go more towards an animal-based diet, and everybody that they've talked to before me, everything they've read before me, said the opposite of that. Do not eat the red meat. Do not eat the crabs. And to hear you say that you can now eat those things and it doesn't bother you, because the root cause wasn't the meat and it wasn't the crab legs. It was the inflammation. Oh, what causes inflammation besides stress, lack of sleep, dysfunctional relationships? Sugar and all the things that turn into sugar. Who knew? So that is powerful. And that's why I felt like I was going to church. If I could just put you on a billboard in Chicago saying is, gout is not caused by those things. And people struggle with that. Even after they become metabolically healthy, they struggle saying, I don't know if I can eat that. But no, it's not that. And then for you to recognize, and through your training and your research, and what's cool about the training and research, you don't have to be a doctor. You don't have to be a pharmacist like my wife. You don't have to be a nutrition. You just, the information is out there. And even as you learn information, don't get indoctrinated into one way. We were both, you mentioned plant-based. We were both plant-based. And so we were open enough in our brains to say, I'm willing to learn more. And then we shifted from that approach. For those that works for it, God bless you. But for us, we realized that an animal-based diet was better. It's not our genes, and it's normal to think about this struggle. In other words, like, is it a bigger struggle to make the dietary changes, or is it a bigger struggle to have these gout flares? Or is it a bigger struggle to think about lupus destroys your entire body? So is it a bigger struggle to have to worry about lupus? Is it a bigger struggle to not be as cute as you want because your asthma flaring up? And he's like, what's wrong with your skin, girl?
Right.
That's a struggle. And obviously dealing with connective tissue disease. That's a bigger struggle than taking the cornbread away from the plate, right? So I just think people have to pause for a moment and say, what struggle am I willing to have? What struggle am I willing to live with? And if I make a simple change where I'm eating animals and non-starchy vegetables, essentially, is that going to be a bigger struggle than the struggle of chronic illnesses for the rest of my life? So I really appreciate that. And speaking of that struggle, we have friends and family and others who are coaching. When you think about low carb, keto, or even carnivore, uh, who benefits the most for considering this way of eating?
Yeah, so this may sound a bit trite, but I think everyone.
Ah, woo.
I think everyone can, benefit from, this way of eating. When my husband and I were dating, and I was, mentioning that I know I do better on keto, I brought him along on the journey. He's lost, 35 pounds. Just it was a struggle. I mean, he was eating, a bucket of ice cream and peanut butter every night,
Mm, mm,
So, friends that I've talked to, I've casually spoken to. I have a friend who was dealing with IBS, shared with her, you got to eat more. You got to eat more animals, man. She was, a big, huge salad eater. She switched from white rice to brown rice. And so I think the more that I've kind of understand foods and how they process in our body, when people are open and willing for you to have the conversation with them, I think we can, evoke a change. But I haven't met anyone yet, including babies.
mhm,
I follow Ken Berry and his wife, and, watching how they're raising their
mhm,
children. And on the flip side, I'm seeing, other people in our community like raise their kids on formula, the processed vegetables. And so I think the more we can normalize this among friends and family, and like us, I mean, somehow help with the mindset change. I think that's the
Mm-hmm.
key to it. Like you have to. I was talking to a friend that I did a brunch recently, and the young lady, she and I had lunch yesterday, and she basically was telling me, she's like, the things that you were talking about is like reprogramming. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
literally having to reprogram my mind to let it make sense to me. And so essentially I think I don't have a family member that couldn't benefit from it. I mean, diabetes has run in my family. I have uncles who've passed away from, certain cancers that I believe now that I know
Mm-hmm.
better, that these things are directly tied to, what we've eaten. So what I say to people now is no, it's not dietary. I mean, it's not genetics, but it is dietary. So if you continue the same diet, then you're going to continue to have the same chronic illnesses. And so I just think with family and friends, if you can get them on board, but I think they do have to see the change in you before they're ever going to be interested.
Mm, mm,
Yes.
mm. I love it. And by the way, you mentioned cancer, and I'm gonna ask you a question about insulin in a moment, but I just want people to understand. I had a previous guest, Dr. Christy Cassering, and she's in the Chicagoland area. She's in the radiological field, I think interventional radiology or something like that. But anyway, she transitioned from, I think it was radiation oncology, to now doing what you and I do, which is we teach metabolic health. Imagine being trained to do radiation oncology, and now you're doing metabolic health. Considering the years of training and the expertise. And she just said, I'm tired of meeting people at the end when I can help them not even get sick. So, but cancer is because of all that insulin makes things grow. So we want to avoid that. Now, going back to this ideal of struggle, right? Now, I don't know about you, DeNitra, but I would struggle more to eat brown rice and a salad than a ribeye. I don't see where the struggle is there. So people say, this is hard. I can't do this. Really? You can't eat a ribeye or some air fried chicken, or, think some delicious salmon with some, if you're into vegetables, with some asparagus or broccoli. That's nasty. So I think people have to be careful what they worry about. And I don't think it's a struggle. I mean, there are people who struggle, but because it is a big shift, right? Like you said, a mindset shift, right? And just so I love what you said. Everybody benefits. Now, are there some people who may benefit more? Sure. People who are overweight, people who have things like epilepsy, people, who are having PMS symptoms, people who suffer from polycystic ovarian and fibroids, people, prevention of dementia, if you're at risk for that. So there's a lot of people who benefit, but I think your idea that everybody benefits, especially in America, is a no-brainer because we are inflamed and we need to stop the inflammation. So I love where you're going with that. But let's talk a little bit about, since I brought up insulin with this cancer idea, insulin is the enemy. So many people come to us, I got a hormone problem, doc. If you could just help me with my hormones, I said, and then I'll say, yeah, I think you do have a hormone problem. And they're saying, yeah, because they told me if I just fix my thyroid. I said, no, that's not the hormone. The hormone that you're struggling with that impacts your body even more than the thyroid is the insulin. So talk a little bit about, let's socialize for a moment, this language. Like, what is insulin resistance, and why is it important also for people to even know what their A1C is? A lot of you'd be surprised, DeNitra, how many people I see that come to me, been diabetic for 10 years, and I'm like, so what's your A1C been with your previous? I don't know. It's like they don't know. It's like,
Right.
really, that's a very important marker. And now we know if fasting insulin is important. But talk a little bit about insulin resistance and the A1C and the value of that.
Absolutely. So it was a game changer for me to better understand that, when I was asked one time if I knew what insulin was, I was like, yeah, insulin is the thing that diabetics take. They stick themselves. Even for me, I had no clue that my body was making its own insulin and that it should. I thought it was something external
Mm,
that people get when they are diabetic, pre-diabetic, or sick. So it was eye-opening for me to learn that my body is making insulin and why it makes insulin. So just for the audience, what I understand now is that insulin is the thing that, pretty much drives sugar um, into my cells for energy. It works automatically. And so for me, it kind of helped me better understand that when it's overworked, we know about overwork, right? When it's overworked, when it's not getting a break, when it's being abused, then insulin is kind of has this mindset, and it does have a mindset to say, hey, I'm
mm,
done, dude. I'm not working no more. You on your own, figure it out. Right. And so then you have this out of control sugar because the mechanism that should be pushing it into the right place is like, I'm on strike. And so now you have what is called insulin resistance. Insulin sensitivity means that, everything is working properly with your
mhm,
insulin. You don't see anything, you don't have any problems. And so for me, it became very important for me to understand A1C. I kept hearing it tossed around. I kept hearing people
mhm,
talk about it, but I had no clue what it was. I had no clue what mine was. I couldn't speak it. And so now when I'm, speaking at events and I have an opportunity to talk to people, I'm like, listen, your A1C is a marker that you need to know and understand. When I was a teacher, I used to
mm,
tell my students, you need to know your multiplication facts just like you know your phone number. And
mm,
so now I say the same thing to clients or anyone who's listening. A1C is a initial marker that you need to know and understand. I think what happens is that when people get a diagnosis of prediabetes, they have no clue how they got there. And essentially they go home and they're like, yeah, I'm watching what I'm eating. What I learned about me is that I was watching myself become a diabetic, essentially,
mm,
because I had no mindset around what needed to change. And so I was watching myself get worse and worse until I started digging deeper to understand. And so if you are unsure, and I'm just saying this aloud, commercial for, A1C, if you are unsure what your A1C is, which actually gives you a 3-month average of what's been going on with your blood sugar, you need to know that and better understand what that means and then find ways to reduce it. I hear people who have never heard the term insulin resistance.
mhm,
We just think we're overweight. We think diabetes is a sugar issue, which it is, but we haven't really understood. And you mentioned earlier, like root causes. We haven't really understood in the past that these things are the root cause of why we are sick.
mhm,
When we talked earlier about, everybody can benefit from it. I'm of the belief now, and I could be wrong. If it is not a communicable disease, I truly believe that it is caused by sugar, processed foods, insulin resistance. Anything you can name to me that we kind of attack them separately and think it's different, I'm starting to find out that this insulin problem that we have is going to find a way to impact our bodies. It shows up differently, but the root cause of it ultimately is the same. And so, yeah, if we can leave your audience with understanding the importance of getting an A1C, knowing it at all times, and also understanding insulin resistance and how that's impacting their body. I think it's a bigger thing to say sometimes, either rather than prediabetes and diabetic, you have to understand because you may never get diabetes or be pre-diabetic, but you very well could be insulin resistant and suffering with high blood pressure. People think it's salt that caused the
mhm,
high blood pressure. I've seen a couple of memes that say we blame salt for what sugar has done.
mhm,
Um, And so yeah, that's my thought about that. And how do we help people become aware and become their own advocates,
Hmm.
when they're at the doctor, to know, people say, oh, my numbers were good. Do you even know what the numbers were? My doc said I
Right.
was great. Yeah, you have to break that down and understand better yourself.
Yeah. And your doctor will be better. Your advanced practice clinician, which includes nurse practitioners and physician's assistants and things like that, they'll be better equipped to help you if you are more knowledgeable and you're not just relying on them giving you the rubber stamp of approval that you're doing okay. So I really appreciate that. And I just looked up the top, just hearing you comment, the top leading causes of death globally. And number one is the heart. That's a inflammatory metabolic problem. Number two is stroke. That's blood vessels getting inflamed. That's where you get those two from. So we had two. COPD. Now we know that many causes, inflammation will make it worse. In fact, when we teach our COPD class within the Advocate Aurora system, we focus on lifestyle. Uh, Obviously, environmental things, smoking, and other things can lead to that as well. Respiratory, that's more of what you were saying, something from the outside getting inside. Maybe you got an infection. That's number four. Neonatal conditions, things that in a lot of those countries where they don't have access to things like, proper diets, they don't get enough folic acid and things like that. They may predispose to that. Number six was cancers of the respiratory system. We just talked about how insulin puts you at risk for that. Inflammation. Dementia, many people call dementia type 3 diabetes. That's inflammation. Diarrheal conditions are more things you catch and get. Diabetes, number nine. And kidney, which the number one cause of kidney disease is diabetes. So if you look at the top 10, you could argue maybe two or three of the top 10 are not inflammatory. So when you mentioned earlier that everybody can benefit, well, if most of the top things that kill you are related to inflammation, then I think everybody would benefit. So I'm totally on board with that. The other thing I want to comment on is um, this ideal of overworking and your insulin. You talked about insulin resistance, and if we can just give insulin a break. And when you think about us as human beings, as human organisms, um, would I perform better at work if I'm not overworked? Yes. Would I be thinking about going on strike if I was overworked? Yes. Would I be desperate for a break if I was overworked? Yep. So all of these things are true of insulin, and all of these things are true of human organisms. So let's give our body a break and stop eating the things that's making our insulin work too hard. So it won't have to go on strike. It won't be looking for, a break, and so it can perform its best job. And I think that's really important. So um, now you got this knowledge, you recognize that maybe an animal based diet was better for you. And then you had to give some things up. We kind of joked earlier about how it's not much of a struggle, but has it been hard? Like, let's think. What's one of your favorite things you shouldn't eat foods, and how much do you miss it? And then has it been hard to just give up some of those things? What's your favorite?
Yeah, so for me, it was super tough.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I was, being punished. I was abnormal. Um, yeah, it was tough. And so you asked me my favorite. So in my life, my most favorite thing to eat was birthday cake.
Mm.
So my stepfather, who is passed away now, who also was, on dialysis and all the things. He was a professional server, and so he would bring wedding cake home when I was a kid, and I would eat wedding cake. And so I fell in love with buttercream icing once I learned the name of it.
Mm.
The
Mm.
more of it I could have, the better. And so then I learned that it was the same icing on birthday cake. And so
Mm.
while I couldn't get wedding cake anytime, I could go to a store or a baker or somewhere and get a birthday cake. So I would buy birthday cake, go there. The baker knew me by name, asked me if I wanted anything written on it. I'm like, nope, just eat me. I wouldn't slice pieces and sit down and have it. I would just keep a fork in the box, walk by it and eat it. If it was your birthday and I knew about it on any particular day, I would go to Sam's Wholesale and buy you a cake just so I could have the four corners where more of the icing was.
Mm.
So, I was a cakeaholic. I didn't wait for people to order me a cake and buy it for my birthday. I was going to take care of that part so we wouldn't have any problems. So that's been the hardest thing that I've had to give up, But like you said earlier, what's been really easy for me is knowing what it was actually doing to my body, and because, sugar is a toxin, it's a drug, it's an addiction for me, and it's still an addiction for me, but I will say last year I turned 52, and my husband and I, we went out and he was so kind. I had birthday steak
Mm.
instead of birthday cake, and so I actually had we put my number 52. My husband got me a candles with the numbers 5 and 2 on it,
Mhm.
and so I actually have a picture of me blowing out um, candles on a steak versus a cake. So I think I may have posted on my social media, having birthday steak and not birthday cake. And I wasn't inflamed, the next
Mhm.
couple of days. I wasn't on a binge for the next week or two. So the adjustments, initially seem hard, but I think, like with our company, Nutritional Knowledge, for us, the great equalizer is knowledge. The
Mhm.
good book, the Bible tells us that, my people perish because they lack knowledge. The part of that the most preachers don't continue to say is that it talks about rejecting knowledge. This is
Mm.
why that lack of knowledge is there. And so I think the more people are open to knowing, really knowing and experiencing for themselves. I mean, everything you and I are talking about, although we've learned some things, we have some training. It's been our own experiences, right?
Mhm.
It is
Mhm.
us, trying it for myself and seeing that this actually works. And so, yeah,
Mm.
birthday cake was it's been the struggle. And even though I know there are some keto ways I can make low carb, and I have tried that over the years where I've had some
Mhm.
low carb, type of desserts, and those work. And I don't binge out on those. But, the more I've seen the benefits to animals, hey, I was happy to sit across from a ribeye full of butter, with
Mm.
my candles in it and blow them
Mhm.
out and, eat that. That was, a perfect celebration for me.
That's right. And I appreciate that. And when I hear your story, I think it was your uncle you mentioned who had dialysis, right?
Yeah. My
Um,
stepfather.
Stepfather.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you think about your stepdad, and I'm fortunate that my stepdad is still here. Shout out to my stepdad. We call him Papa Ed.
Okay.
Shout out to him. But and he adds so much value to my life. We do family trips together and things like that. But he adds so much value that it's hard to imagine him not being in my life. So
Yeah.
I sympathize with you as you reflect on your stepdad's life. But we talked about giving up things, right? I would give up quite a bit to keep my stepdad on this planet, right? I would do that. And what gives me so much pain, probably for both of us, in your case, is your stepdad. In my case, I think about my wife's dad who has dementia. Now, if I knew what I knew today, I am certain that we could have prevented that
Yeah.
or slowed it down so much that, I mean, he's 80 now. He's
Yeah.
still with us, but maybe he wouldn't get it until he was 90. Who
Mhm.
knows? But
Mhm.
imagine, uh, is it that hard to give up these things to have them here with us? And I had, by the way, just as something for those who are not aware of Dr. Brett Schroer when he left the diet doctor to join Metabolic Mind, and I just listened to an episode where a young lady and her mom were struggling with dementia in the young lady who has Downs. And this young lady, the story was so compelling. I think she's in her 40s. And she was just declining to the point where she had to go into a facility for a short time. And within a week or two of doing very low carb, she started to regain her cognitive function. Uh, so, again, anecdotal, not a randomized controlled trial, but if I'm desperate for an answer and I have a family member who is a little earlier in the dementia journey and I have a path to help them, so I encourage people to check out Metabolic Mind, and it talks beyond those. It talks about any type of mental illness and the benefits. But shout out to Dr. Brett Schroer and the others who are working with him, to like Dr. Georgia Ede, and she's the one who was also involved in the Keto for Refractory Mental Illness study. You can look that up, and how within, before people left the hospital, the schizophrenia, the bipolar, and the depression pretty much went into remission for maybe 43 or so percent of the people. And so there's a way, guys. There's another way to do this. Now, okay, so we see each other at a place like KetoCon, right? And now, but I think in that event, unlike the Symposium for Metabolic Health conference, at that conference, they feed you. Okay. So it's easy to do your keto, low carb, carnivore because they feed you. I think at KetoCon we pretty much did our own thing, right? So we have to. So now we're being social, and maybe it's easier because when we had meals together, we were everybody at the table was kind of low carb, right? But when you're out and about dealing with family at a conference, uh, has it been hard for you to stay with your keto journey, your
Yeah.
low
So
carb?
yeah. So you're going to continue to hear me say initially, because I want
Hmm.
people to understand that I didn't arrive here overnight, right? And so while I'm getting some things right now, it didn't start out this way. So initially, social events were hard. I can remember going to dinner with someone thinking, I better get the baked potato and I better get the salad just so they don't ask me questions because our restaurants have, a meat and two vegetables, so
Hmm.
just ordering a steak draws attention to you, right? So I would get the salad, I would get the steak, I mean, the baked potato, but then that night, I would be inflamed again.
Hmm.
I would feel the pain immediately. And so for me, I think at social events, people talk about moderate, oh, girl, it's just one night. Well, that's what they were thinking. But for me, it was going to be, weeks of binging. So
Hmm.
when I do social events now, I pretty much am going to eat before I go. If it's after because I do intermittent fasting as well. If it's after my 6 o'clock time where I've closed my kitchen, according to Dr. Moore, Dr. Yvonne Moore says, yeah, close your kitchen. Um, then I'm not going to eat anyway. Or I take something with me. I've been well known to, have a Ziploc bag with a couple of steak pieces in my purse or some bacon. Um, so to your question, yes, it's hard initially, but the more again that your mind starts to change and you start to be of benefits. And then the other thing that I've noticed is that when you are true to yourself and who you are and where you are now, if you
Mm.
do go in full force and say, hey, I'm only having this. Yeah, you only see the meat and the cheese on my plate.
Mm.
Sometimes it's a conversation starter for people. And so I also do that as well. I let it start conversations with people and they start asking. I'm like, okay, you ask, you're going to get it. And so, I'll say, I struggle with some health challenges and, many of the things that are being offered here causes flare for me. Sometimes I even say I'm allergic to it, because essentially
Mm,
that's, I feel like I have an allergy to carbohydrates at this point. Um, Similar
mm.
to a peanut allergy. So I kind of use it in that vein to kind of make it light to people to kind of understand. But social events can be tough. But again, you have to, find your own way, and what works best for you.
Yeah, thank you for all of those comments because I've had the same experiences, and but I think that preparation is so key. The good thing about eating this way is that you don't get hungry like you used to. So if I have to travel or something, when people come by with the sodas and the juices and the processed, crackers and things of that nature. It doesn't even faze me to say I'm not interested. So, because I'm not hungry.
Right.
So that's number one. So when you're an intermittent faster, you don't have hunger. When you're doing low carb or keto, a lot of times you're not hungry. But being prepared is key. Number two, you said, which is so powerful. You said, be true to who you are. And if that's who you are, a person that doesn't live with chronic disease and you know why you don't live with, then just be true to that. And I think even at just as powerful is, you personalize your why. You tell people, you do you, but if I eat that, that's going to cause problems for me. And so my why is it may be different than yours, but I think people need to it's hard to argue with someone who says, like when I talk to a plant-based person, um, and I say to them, if I eat Brussels sprouts, I get a stomach ache. Now, what do you do with that? And they may say, well, Brussels sprouts have phytonutrients and antioxidants. I say, yeah, that it may have that, but I get gas, I get bloating, I get belly pain. So would you then ask me to still eat that? So I just think those are strong arguments that then allow the person hearing them say, okay, well, I guess if that was me, I wouldn't want that either. So I do think that those are good approaches that I think people need to hear. And you've learned so much over the years. For those who are gonna want to know, who do I go to and listen to as I learn this low carb keto? Who have you been exposed to over the years that have influenced you?
Yeah, so of course you've been, influential on my journey. I think in our space of being people of color, it's rare. So I'm always seeking out folks of color. So Wendy Featherston was one of my initial Black Girls Keto too. I met her through Facebook. She's done some great retreats. Black Carnivore, Black Carnivore, 88 Fox. I've learned a lot from her. I was, coached by her. Um, Medically speaking, I follow Dr. Ken Berry and his wife. They've been amazing. They have consistent um, opportunities to learn. Like I passed a kidney stone. I literally was in the emergency
Mm,
room, like Googling, Dr. Berry and kidney stones to, see what to do next. And so, and I mentioned Dr. Westman earlier, who has just been phenomenal on my journey. So, I tend to lean in on people who that I resonate with, based on my own research and my experience. So I research things and I experience them for myself. And so I lean in on, folks like that, just being able to stay, like I've created my own village, if you will, of people who feed me to stay on this journey, to, normalize this journey for me. I have to get in spaces that normalize it so it's not, I'm a three-headed monster, because I don't
hmm
eat vegetables anymore, I don't eat fruit, and so yeah, being with like minds, you mentioned that earlier. So that's like super helpful for me.
Yeah, and don't turn off the podcast because she said not really doing a lot of veggies and fruit. People are like, "What? I thought that was the secret to being healthy." And as you have learned, that's not necessarily the secret for most of us. So definitely for those who haven't tried the Black Carnivore, although she's not active right now, she has a ton of content out there, particularly if you're really trying to move towards carnivore. And obviously, Dr. Eric Westman is kind of the mentor for all of us because he, unlike some of us, he does research plus clinical practice. So he has the practical application of this methodology and the research to go with it. Dr. Kim Berry obviously is constantly with his wife Nisha putting great content out there. So we want to celebrate all they do
And
to
I
give
didn't
us.
mention Maria and Craig Emmerich.
Yes.
Oh, what I love about them is that they're going to give you the super clean approach, right?
Right.
If
Right.
you're into checking your ingredients and learning that yes, this is keto, yes, this is low carb. However, it might do this as well. And so that's where I
Mm-hmm.
got my keto and carnivore coaches under Maria and Craig Emmerich. They've been phenomenal on my journey as well.
Yeah.
I did get
Power.
a chance to meet them.
Power couple.
Um, as well. So yeah, it's they're great people out there, but those are the main ones that I follow. And my doctor,
Absolutely.
Dr. Moore, Yvonne Moore, I actually met her in Dr. Westman's Keto Made Simple course and found out that she
Cool.
was from Tennessee, the Memphis area, and she, I looked her up, and so literally changed my doctor to go to have a low carb practicing doctor. Has really helped me. She has a group me that she runs for, just women who are trying to lead a better life. So yeah, she's been extremely so she's been like my that I can touch immediately
Mm-hmm.
type person,
Right.
where the rest of you all are kind of virtual in my
Right.
world. So yeah.
Right.
So yeah.
Well, thank you for that. And again, for those who are looking for metabolic docs, the Society for Metabolic Health Practitioners has a search. The Diet Doctor site has a search. The Low Carb USA site has a search. So there's ways to find people in your area. And then some people, go virtual and they'll, look up a Dr. Tro or Dr. Brian Linsky's, other people. There are people who do virtual work in most states. So there's ways to make this work, guys. And you don't have to go the conventional route to make this work. So appreciate all of that. I do want to circle back a little bit, and I mentioned that I would mention the nutrition professional at the beginning of this recording. I just want to touch on some of those fears that she has, because a lot of this is fear based that paralyzes us from making change. And so she had various fears, and let's look at 5 of these fears that she talked about. The first is that she feels that the keto diet is nutritionally poor unless done with absolute precision. Quote, while fat has tons of benefits, it doesn't contain a lot of nutrients like vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants. It also doesn't have any fiber for your good bacteria to munch on. You know, what does contain all of those important nutrients? Well, carbs, in her opinion, specifically the veggies and fruit you just told me you don't eat that much of, right? Beans and whole grains. All of the foods that's shunned on this keto diet are the nutrient dense foods. So if you eat keto, you're not going to get these. So DeNitra, how dare you suggest that we eat this nutritionally poor keto diet? What would be your thoughts to this well-intentioned nutrition professional?
Well, I think that she's among a lot of people who are reluctant and have fear. Again, I would just say you have to experience it for yourself, because her thought pattern for me is the complete opposite of my experience. I did all the things. I did all the plant based. I was a banana lover,
Mm,
apple lover, grape lover. I used to have canisters of nuts because I didn't want them mixed up. So I wanted my cashews in one thing, my walnuts in another, my pecans in another. I was doing the grains. I did oatmeal. I was a honey nut Cheerio. Like if you go
Mm.
back on my Sam's receipts, I've probably bought enough honey nut Cheerios to, saved my life. Beans, I love pinto beans, white beans, all of these things I liked, but they were inflammatory for me.
Mm-hmm.
They were not nutritious for me, and as I've, again, in my research learned, about, the oxalates that, live in plants. It makes more sense to me now. And when I'm not eating them, I don't have flare ups.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what I've learned, where she says that, carbs basically are essential, I've learned that they're not essential, that I can live
Mm-hmm.
my life without carbohydrates. I can live my life without fiber. People ask me, like, if you're not, eating fiber, how do you eliminate, And so I try to explain to people that essentially you're not looking to eliminate, you're looking to have a waste. Once you eat proper food, and it gets in your body, it may take longer for you to have a waste, but that's essentially why. Because if it's nutrients that you're getting, then it is giving you nutrients in your body. The reason why they're not, phasing out, what you're going to get from that is the waste. Um, so yeah, just the short of that is I was constantly sick. I had flare ups following those guidelines, and I got them from doctors, to, eat more of this. Fruits have a green light, they have a pass, have all you want. They're not going to bother you, eat your veggies, I just don't find it to be the case for me and so many others, you know, and so it just doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
So I don't eat them at all. I'm not tempted by vegetables. I consider myself a carnivore with a twist of sugar addiction.
Ah,
Even if I'm gonna fall, it will not be on vegetables. It will be on. I tell folks, sugar is my drug of choice. You don't have to worry about me being tempted by it. I just gotta have a potato. I just gotta eat this salad. So those are not temptations for me.
yeah. I think the most important thing is that yeah, I agree. Fiber. I made an entire YouTube video about fiber. So if anybody's watching this and they want to see some scientific evidence of why fiber is not necessary, then check out that video. Just Dr. Tony Hampton, fiber, and um, and I agree that your body is pretty much going to tell you what you need to know. So many people in this low carb community have kind of moved more towards carnivore because they listen to their body. And if I cheat and have the cabbage or the Brussels sprouts, my body just tells me, not exactly what I want right now. You may survive it because your body gets healthier, so your stomach can handle it better, maybe. But usually there's a price to pay. So if your body tolerates those things, have at it. But for me and DeNitra, it's been better to avoid those things. So appreciate that.
One of the things that people, when I talk about eating meat, people bring up to me that they can't tolerate red meat. They
Mm,
don't eat red meat. And so
mm,
my question back to them always is, when have you ever just eaten the meat?
mm-hmm.
Usually you've coupled it with, a Sprite, some sweet tea, some unlimited. If you're at a restaurant, unlimited tea, you've eaten the bread, you've eaten, the potato, you've eaten the macaroni and cheese, but ultimately you blame the meat. When I would, venture to say that it's all the other stuff you ate, and so I challenge people to explore eating just the meat and then tell me that you have an issue with red meat.
Yeah. Um, and I have absolutely seen that, and sometimes your body is not used to digesting protein. Some of my patients will use bethane hydrochloric acid, and they may have to allow their body to start making more acid before they tolerate it. So so you have to be careful when you say you don't tolerate something. If your body's accustomed to one type of dietary pattern and digestion, it may take a little time to adapt. So I agree with that 100%. Just got to be careful what you're saying you don't tolerate. But I agree. Clean it up a little bit, as DeNitra is suggesting. If you clean it up, I think you'll do better. Now, let's go to the second fear that was described in the article. And again, I'll have a link to that article. And quote, it can, keto can mess with hormones, especially with women's hormones, dramatically reducing carbs as a stress on the body, period. Quote, our body needs fat, protein, and, with a big capital N, carbs. It's human biology. That's an interesting statement, that carbs are essential. So when someone reduces their carb intake as low as you need for ketosis, this raises our stress hormone cortisol. High cortisol levels can increase our body's sugar, cause insulin resistance, which we talked about earlier, can trigger inflammation and trigger weight gain. Interesting. Without carbs, women can have mood issues, fertility issues, estrogen and testosterone imbalances, and blood glucose issues. Oh, and weight gain too. So, DeNitra, last time I checked, you were a woman, and you've obviously experienced this keto diet, low carb diet. What's been your experience as it relates to the impact of hormones using a dietary pattern where you reduce the carbs?
Mm-hmm. So I keep thinking that this article, I keep saying that I've had just the opposite
Right.
experience of what the article says. So for me, I'm 52. I am post-menopausal at this point. But when I first started my keto journey, I wasn't. And I had just the opposite experience. I was night sweats, mood swings, PMS, hot flashes. All of that was a struggle, to the point that at one point I was considering a hormone replacement therapy, because it was so bad and intolerable. However, I will say again, going low carb, keto, and essentially what that means is restricting carbohydrates, which are not essential. You have no need for them. You can be zero carb. So for her to say in her article that, carbs are basically essential, is just not my experience. Carbohydrates, for me, they trigger inflammation, and I think of carbohydrates, as sugar, as, ultra processed foods, anything in a package. And like I say, they name it, keto and stuff on the front, but if you read the back, and you can go a little deeper and learn that there are some ingredients in there that are inflammatory. So for me, again, those symptoms have disappeared. My moods, no night sweats, no hot flashes. I tend to lean toward cold, period. So if I'm, at a hotel, I like it ice cold, but it's not because I'm having, hot flashes. That's just a preference. And I've been that way,
Mm-hmm.
my entire life. But hot flashes and night sweats are a totally different animal.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was heavy on the carbs, um, that, those were my triggers, and I was heavier. So I've been able to, lose the weight even in menopause. I've been able
Mm-hmm.
to drop, close to, 40 pounds,
Mm.
um, changing, just taking the junk foods out,
Mm-hmm.
have contributed to, attributed to great weight loss for me.
Yeah. The my experience as a doctor has been, like you said, the opposite of what a well-intentioned nutritionist stated. And I find that women have more stable moods because their sugar's not up and down. Eating those high carb foods raise your sugar, then the insulin's made, it crashes. So I don't see that at all. Now, women do have more hormone issues compared to men, and they have to be thoughtful about that. So I think there are nuance to it. But as a general rule, I see benefit. Dr. Kiltz would be out of business if fertility didn't improve. So I actually just recorded, by the way, an episode with him, which will come out probably before your episode. So Dr. Kiltz, and I'm actually going to go on his platform as well. So one of the things he talked about was, yeah, I do meditation. I do things like acupuncture, massage. But the thing that has increased the fertility of his patients the most is an animal-based diet. So when you think about a low-fat diet, and you think about, well, if you're gonna have testosterone and estrogen, you need certain things. One of which is you need the cholesterol and fat. And if you're doing a low-fat diet, you're going to be deficient in that. So I would argue, in order to balance your hormones, you need those things. So I think there's a little bit of a disconnect. And for those who are really being cautious and struggling to hear a different perspective, that may be an experiment if you're not being successful that you want to try. You may want to give it, 2, 3, 4 months, maybe a half a year, and see what happens. Now, it's not going to take that long to feel great, but if you do that, you may find a victory. So let's go to fear number 3, which talks about, quote, keto lowers the diversity of the microbiome. Quote, today, there's more and more research connecting our overall health to our microbiome and to create the diversity we need. That requires a lot of plant-based fiber, although we just commented on fiber. So, DeNitra, now this hits home for me because my issue was my belly. I was not trying to lose weight. I thought I had mental clarity until I got mental clarity. I didn't really know I didn't have it. Energy, all these things got better, but I was just focused on my belly. So my personal experience is that I don't know what kind of microbiome I got. I just know it's a happy belly. So what's been your experience dealing with clients and your, stomach issues related to being on this low carb or keto diet?
Absolutely. So personally, for me, again, plant based, took a toll on my health. Um, my diagnosis were increasing, the prescriptions were increasing, and I wasn't getting better. However, what I know in this, time and space, plant based, has become, super popular. People are looking for better ways to be healthy, which I think is awesome that people are, turning a corner and wanting to be healthy. However, we've been given this thought that it is somehow this super magic pill to eat plants. It's natural, it's from the ground. The Bible says to, have the herbs and all things, right? Um, but what I've discovered, working with clients, I was sharing with you earlier, I was working with a young lady who had IBS, and we she struggled with me for some time about adding more red meat to her diet. She wanted to do salads, the brown rice and the wheat bread.
Mm-hmm.
I have another young lady I was working with who was vegetarian for, oh my God, she was vegetarian for 14 years. And I finally got her to eating meat. And she literally was like, I've not had a normal bowel movement in 14 years because of that. I mean, she was
Mm.
having all types of skin issues. And it's the mood. I mean, she was on, antidepressants, losing hair. So plant-based is, I think where we have kind of in our society normalized it as, a free range. I'm highly recommending that people do their homework around, the impact of plants on our body. What I
Mm-hmm.
found is that there's no storage place. There's no place for them to, operate in our body. People think because they have a bowel movement immediately after eating plants that it's something great about that. And I'm having to say to them, no, it's because it had no place to go in your body. It could have just, skipped coming in. I am reading a book, and I'm going to take a pause to get you the author because I want to give credit to the author. It's called Toxic Superfoods.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to be able to say the author's name because I have it on Audible. But oh my God, is she doing an amazing job? Her name is Sally K. Norton. Oh my God, I can't believe I could remember that for the moment. But her Toxic Superfoods book is simply amazing in that she is like taking these things that we've normalized as superfoods. And now my super for that is that it makes you super sick, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And again, these are my experiences with people that I'm working with that who are trying to, improve their metabolic health. There may be some people who can tolerate it. I know they're low carb vegans and vegetarians.
Mm-hmm.
So this is not a bash. This is speaking where there's some people who adopt what they think is going to be better for them without
Mm-hmm.
understanding fully. And so I would
Mm-hmm.
recommend her book to anyone who wants to get a better understanding around their foods. For me, I've not seen that plant-based was a benefit for me. It was actually just the opposite. Beyond just giving up sugar, the plant-based, because I gave up the sugar and thought that plant-based was the way to go. And I found just the opposite for me.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that as well. I again, uh, this ideal of continuous learning is so important, and I think that we have to be thinking about it in the sense that we may have a different perspective and hearing that some of the things that we thought were good for us, sometimes it's not good for us because we think we're getting the nutrients, but we're not because they have anti nutrients and or the you know things like oxalates and phytates and tannins and things like that. Sometimes we think about a plant-based dietary pattern and we're like, okay, it's cleaner and then but you have to take supplements, right? And you're taking supplements because a lot of the things you think you're getting, you're not really getting. For me, it's the negative effects on the gut and things like that that really drive the decisions I've made around that. So I think that's really important. So let's go to another fear, and I think this is probably one of the most common fears. Dealing, the heart. A lot of people say, don't want to eat that red meat. It's gonna harm the heart. And even when I got my master's in nutrition, there's always this: if you do keto, don't do it too long because it may help you lose weight, it may help you reverse the diabetes, but because of other factors, you want to be careful. So there's this fear, which is probably one of the biggest fears why people stay away from these dietary patterns. What's been your experience when it comes to the heart health issue?
Yeah, so for me, again, in research and my learning and my exposure in this low carb setting, I do have high cholesterol. And that is supposed to be indicative of, what's going on with your heart. But, I know that now that there's a better assessment to tell. And so I've had the CAC, the coronary artery calcium scan, and there's no indication that I have any heart issues. I'm not due another one for 10 years. And so, in terms of the heart, I think my heart is quite healthy at this point. I'm not even trying to work to lower my LDL because I understand now that I need that.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, again, this is a mindset shift for people because it's, polar opposite of, what we hear in the mainstream. So I tell folks they have to be their own nutrition managers.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, that's been my experience, is that the CAC is more indicative because it's an actual scan of what's happening to my heart. I do have a little trick I use. I know I read it somewhere where, if you have this, if you drop water and sugar on the ground, it sticks. If you drop water and butter, you're going to slip and slide. And so I try to help people understand that, it's the sugar, not the butter. Butter's going to slip and slide in a warm place. So I eat as much as I like.
Yep. Uh, yeah. Thank God. One of the things that makes my meals delicious are the ones that have fat. I try to eat fatty meat as much as possible. And you're right, DeNitra. Even the American Heart Association, in their position statement, speaking of one of our leaders in the space, A-Day Fox, the Black Carnivore, we did a video announcing the American Heart Association now endorses low carb. Check out that video on YouTube if you just search my name and the American Heart Association. But in that position statement, they clearly stated unequivocally, it's not the MRI of the heart, it's not the echo, it's not the stress test. The best predictor of a future heart attack, which is why you got 10 years to not worry about that test again, is a heart scan. And in our health system, a coronary artery calcium score heart scan test is a $50 test. It may be up to $100, even if your health system doesn't do it. There are various organizations, if you search it, where you can get that test. If you have a low score or a zero score, it's kind of hard to have a heart attack if you don't have any plaques in your arteries. Very difficult. There are ways you can still get it, but it's very difficult. The other test that everybody should get, as we've discussed earlier, is a fasting insulin. A fasting insulin level is 6.7 times more predictive of a future heart attack than your cholesterol or your LDL. In fact, your blood pressure is 1.9 times more predictive of a future heart attack than the cholesterol or the LDL. So it's not that we're saying the cholesterol and the LDL don't matter at all, but I think the LDL matters more if it's an excess amount of small particle LDLs. So if you ask your doctor, could you do a particle test for my LDL? That'll be more predictive. But even if that test is not perfect, if you don't have any plaques, not too concerned. So whoever's checking out this episode, let's get a heart scan, also called a coronary artery scan, also called the CAC test. Let's get a fasting insulin level. And with that data, you can remove some of these fears that our nutrition professional has. And again, her training probably preceded some of this information, so she may not be aware. And by the time the nutrition professionals catch up to this, more people would have had a heart attack or a stroke. And so we don't have time. We can't wait. Just like that example of the young lady who, on the Metabolic Mind video with Dr. Brett Scher, was able to improve cognitive function. They can't wait for the randomized controlled trial. By the time that comes out, the young lady would have not had an opportunity to recover. So now let's go to the last fear, which is most people on the keto diet aren't actually in ketosis. Quote, to be in ketosis, you must manage your macros perfectly. There's no kinda, no treats, no splurges, unquote. So DeNitra, my question to you is, are you doing keto diet perfectly? Do you measure ketones? Do you make sure the keto diet talks about 70% fat? Obviously, low carb doesn't require as much fat. And have you gotten results in spite of that? So what's been your experience with this concern that our nutrition professional raised?
Right. So, that may be her definition of perfect, first of all. But also, I do my best to not allow perfection to be the enemy of progress. And again, in my initial journey on keto, I was able to, still have some keto treats, some low carb cheesecakes. And I was still seeing progress. Removing the sugars and the high carb foods were the thing that were my hindrance. Beyond those things, it was better for me and my health overall to go to a low to no carb, right?
Mhm.
Just because it kept making me feel better, it kept me satiated so that I didn't have these triggers. So for me, it's not about a perfection. It's about finding, what works for you, so that you can, continue to fill up on nutrient dense food. If the purpose of us eating is to get nutrients, then let's figure out, where do I get my most nutrients. And for me, so I think there is no perfect way. I think that each person, there is no one size fit all. At all. I try to keep it simple. So no, I do not count macronutrients. I don't track my food. I don't do any of that, because to me that becomes some complications. I kind of again follow my doctor. Dr. Moore said, eat the foods that love you. Right. A
Mm.
lot of times you'll hear us saying, oh, I love such and such and such a food. Right. But I need the foods that love me. And if you unpack what love means, it's the ones that's going to treat you the best, right? Make you feel the best. And so I kind of follow that. But perfection, yeah, I don't subscribe to perfection, because I think everybody's bodies, although everybody can benefit from low carb, I think, our levels of extent, may show up differently. So I
Mhm.
think there is no spectrum of perfection. You just have to figure out what works for you. And if you're seeing progress with your changes, then move with it. That's my experience. Now, I do see more progress the less carbs I eat.
Mhm.
The animal based has been a game changer for me. It's been, life saving for me.
Yep. Yeah, this idea that you need to be in ketosis is, for the most part, a farce. Now, in my practice, we don't even talk about measuring ketones. We do focus on getting the carbs to a certain level, and we talked about therapeutic carb restriction earlier. I tend to endorse, when you look at studies that are really done well, they try to get the total carbs, not the net carbs, in the 20 to 30 range or less. That's therapeutic. But I'll be honest, most people at that level will be in ketosis, but who really needs to be in ketosis and stay there? Probably not the type 2 diabetic. They just need to reduce carbs. Not the person that's trying to reverse their hypertension. Probably need to be, you know, at that level. Now, when you start thinking about things that may require you to be at that level, I would argue any disease of the brain. Um, if When you think about metabolic mind, going back to that YouTube channel and Dr. Brett Scher, um, that example we gave of the young lady who had Downs, who was able to improve cognitive function, she's probably going to do better, because it's really, is it the low carb that's doing the benefit, reducing the insulin burden? Is it the ketosis? We still need to do research, but we have found that the disorders of the brain, think going back to Dr. Georgia E's study, keto for refractory mental illness, there are some there's some evidence to suggest for people who have epilepsy, you don't want to go in and out of ketosis if you have epilepsy. You want to kind
Yeah.
of stay, right? Maybe for people who have cognitive decline, not as much as epilepsy, but there's probably issues there. And if I'm bipolar, I probably want to not be going out of, or schizophrenia. So I just think those types of issues matter more, maybe a little less for autoimmune diseases. But I just want to put that out there that there are examples. But for the most part, for most people who will check out this episode, you just have to reduce the processed foods, the sugars, the highly processed grains, the seed oils, eat real whole foods. You don't have to measure your ketones. If you decide to do that, that's totally okay. A lot of people are very curious when they start. So I love your responses. They make sense. And we don't have to be perfect at this. I do not measure anything. I may have patients count carbs in the beginning just to, because they don't know where the carbs are, right?
Right.
You mentioned bananas and apples. The average person doesn't know a banana has 28 carbs. Divided by 4 is 7 teaspoons of sugar. The average person doesn't know that the average apple has 20 to 25 carbs. Divided by 4 is 5 to 6 teaspoons of sugar. If they knew that, then they would pause. But then once you get the feel for things, you don't have to do all of that. Now, so I appreciate all of those. And again, my hope is that if another nutrition professional, including the one whose article we highlighted, hears this podcast, instead of saying you're wrong, DeNitra and Dr. Hampton, you're wrong. Instead of saying that, they say, you know what? Let me take a deeper dive into this. Maybe I should question the same people who made the food pyramid that told me to eat 7 to 9 servings of grains and all of that nonsense. Because if you give that to a diabetic, they are not going to have normal sugars. So if they have created resources in the past that we were required to follow or expected to follow, they should be guidelines, then we should then question, maybe they still got it wrong. Maybe there's something, and the best example, and this is, I would ask any medical professional and or person with the guidance of their clinician to do this, do the experiment. And what really motivates me is if what I've been doing for the last 5, 10, 20 years hasn't been working, we should pause and say, let's try something different. So thank you for all of those talking points. In terms of you as a human being trying to add value to the world, we're both trying to do that. We know that many people we've worked with, including personally, our experience have healed and benefited from reducing processed food, eating whole foods, and trying to reduce the things that raise glucose levels, which then lead to high insulin. What are you hoping to do to help get this message out to more people besides joining like a podcast?
I mean, but this is a great start. So again, thank you for inviting me to this. It's been amazing. For me, as I indicated before, my husband and I have established a health and wellness business, Nutritional Knowledge. And our thought is that if you knew better, would you, could you, should you do better? And so we just believe that the great gap is in knowledge, people really having a good understanding about what's happening in their body and taking the research. So like the things that you and I are learning from Society of Metabolic Health, Nutrition Network, it's on a doctor and practitioner level, just as an educator, I endeavor to break that down in small bite sizes to help people
Mm-hmm.
understand. So, we do events in our community. We intend to create some courses that people can subscribe to. Ultimately, we're going to have a membership where this is ongoing, where we bring phenomenal doctors like you and, Dr. Berry, hopefully to, just be kind of Q&A.
Mm-hmm.
For people that are wanting to change, I mean, the idea would be to normalize this. I want to be able to go to a restaurant where I can order the steak and not, and save money because I'm not getting the vegetables um, I'm not getting vegetables and I'm not getting the bread. And so, we're knee deep into our business. We want to have a facility where people can come. It can be a lounge place. The brunch that I recently did was, learning opportunities. I had people trying, the electrolytes, trying a chaffle. I actually paid you and your wife's video on chaffles as a part of, our learning. I had, waffle irons there so people could try,
Hmm.
chaffle. So, whatever it takes to make it, bite sized and plain and digestible, if you will, for, the average person to be able to understand how to make these changes, I'm all about it, whatever that looks like. So I coach some people, I guide some people. I send them to YouTube's, I send them your videos, I send them other videos. So I'm all in until God just fully defines the exact space, which I think there isn't one. I'm all over wherever I can, and people are open to listening.
Yeah, thank you. Well, again, we don't have enough people out there doing this. And as you suggested earlier, we definitely don't have enough people of color doing this. And as we continue to share this message, we need to do it in different ways so that maybe somebody will only need a podcast. Maybe somebody only will need a clinician who will give them a handout. Maybe some people, as you've done over the years, need a coach to just walk with them. But the key is let's create a lot of ways for people to learn this information. And when we do it, there are some people in the low carb keto, like I think about Dr. Ivor Cummings, who's an engineer, very smart, very technical and scientific, though, right? So we need to make sure that there's an opportunity for him to get a little detailed and nuanced. And he's a big fan of the heart scan, which is why I brought his name up. So if you're not familiar with Dr. Ira Cummings, please look at some of his information as well. Um, and and I like this idea of normalizing low carb and keto and carnivore and insulin resistance and metabolic health and what the heck is my A1C. That should be normalized. Well, again, DeNitra, I really appreciate you and the contribution that you, your family, and your organization are going to be adding to the conversation around low carb, keto, and carnivore. And there's so many ways to do that. And the way I do it in clinic is to give a handout out. Sometimes they need more, and I'll refer them to a professional like yourself to coach them. Sometimes it'll be a class. Sometimes it's having a video, how to do low carb, and I'll just put them in front of that video. Sometimes it's referring them to additional resources like Dr. Joan Iflin, who has the processed food addiction support. And some people need that level of support. Sometimes it's just a big class full of people. So I just think that there are so many ways to get this information to people. And we need you and others to not only give the information, but also to diversify the space so that people who may not be as familiar with the Dr. Eric Westmans and the Dr. Ken Berries, they'll be in a position to hear a voice that maybe they feel more comfortable with. And I think that's okay because that's just people. They're human and we are tribal. And I want to have a low carb doc who's from India. I just saw a movie with a cast of a lot of Asians. It was a comedy, Joy Ride or something, Joy Trip. But what I love about it's a little raunchy, so I'm not it's a little over the top. So for those who haven't seen it, be cautious. No, look at the reviews first. But what I loved about the movie is that it pretty much had a whole culture of people from Asia, and 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 sometimes that's what we need. Sometimes if I'm in front of a different audience, they may need somebody that looks like them, and that's okay. It's not a problem. We're still in a world that's not equal, and we have to be comfortable with that. That's why we want everybody to be able to spread this healing message. So thank you for all that you shared so far, particularly your organization. We'll have a link to that. But let's talk about protecting our nest. And as you know, there's so many ways to do that. And when you think about how you and your husband plan to protect your nest, what types of areas do you plan to focus on over the next year?
Yeah, so for us, I just want to make a quick comment about the diversity piece. Is what I love about Nutrition Network. I just, recently finished my coaching practitioners process with them. We'll have our graduation July 27th. But in that, the diversity is building. I mean, I'm in there with folks from Swaziland, from Paris, from the UK. There are about 16 of us, and I think that we all were from all different places. We have a map that's like pointing us like all over the world, but Nutrition Network has kind of been like the unifier for us to be able to come together and spread this message. In terms of me and my family, we have adopted the protecting your nest process, what we call a process. We're working on our nutrition. For us and my family, my immediate family, we're finding that, animal based is what's best for us. We may do a salmon croquette, but we're not using the meal, we're just, using the egg, maybe a little onion to have that. In terms of exercise, we are movement. I try to get no less than 15,000 steps a day. And, again, my doctor, Dr. Moore, often says that, movement is medicine. And so, she is 69, still looking good, running half marathons, and she is moving. So, that's an encouragement to me. I posted recently on my Facebook page, there's an 85-year-old that I see at my gym. We have the same birthday. I call her my birthday buddy. Exercise is key for her. She's at the gym every day, looks great. Sleep is important to us. And then again, our thought process, how we think is key to this. And, staying away from traumatic situations also is, very important to us. It's easy to, some family issues can cause, trauma, the things that you grew up with. I've had trauma, in my life, but I try to stay clear of those things. So we're working the whole thing, Doc. We're trying to make sure that the whole nest, not leaving out any of it, is good and covered. So we appreciate you and that, that process and philosophy I share with people as well.
Yeah, I just think it's important that we think about what is the biggest barrier to my progress, and let's address that. And it's different for everybody. And if you do one part of this nest and rope and you don't think about the others, you may find yourself struggling. So I just think if these are the main things that are causing chronic disease and inflammation, insulin resistance, metabolic disease, etc., let's have awareness. And if you can check the box, exercise, check that box and move to the next thing. So I do appreciate the scope. And then what's really interesting is the salmon croquettes. That's always been a staple. So now I don't need the rice anymore, but when I was doing this initially, I would do the cauliflower rice with the salmon. And yes, cornmeal and flour, a tablespoon of either is equivalent to half a tablespoon of sugar. So why would I put that on my salmon croquettes? And shocker, if I fry it, it's still going to have a crust. Shocker. It's like, really? Right. Because I thought it was a crust thing. I don't know why my mom was using that cornmeal, but it's not necessary. And now I can eat guiltlessly as many of those salmon croquette patties with as you have suggested, the egg, and it'll hold it together. So thank you for that example, which touches home for us. So let's remind people. And I really appreciate you joining me today. How can people find you on social media and or benefit from the great organization you guys are starting?
Absolutely. So just in terms of the doing this for a lifetime, I have a new motto that I'm starting to use is that we can either do a lifestyle change that offers a greater quality of life, or we can continue on this life sentence of
Mm,
chronic illness full of prescriptions,
mm,
drugs that will never cure us. Will only treat our symptoms, make them worse, or add to them. So just like to tell people, it's like lifestyle change or life sentence. Take
mm,
your pick. I'll take the lifestyle change. Um,
mm,
so in terms of finding us, we do have a website that's nutritionalknowledge.com. The spelling is KNEW, nutritionalknowledge.com. We also have a Facebook page and we are on LinkedIn. We are, continuing to build out our process. And what we will ultimately be, we're still in the infancy stages in terms of reaching people, but our goal is to help people transform their lives into, having high quality lives without all of these ailments. I love to travel. I don't want to be the one needing to be wheeled in a wheelchair simply because of
mhm,
something that I have been eating.
mhm,
And so I think quality of life is important. And our goal is, ultimately to, help people gain knowledge, experiment on themselves. Don't take my word for it. Try it for yourself. Give yourself 7 days, give yourself 10 days, 30 days, and see how you feel with
mhm,
eliminating certain things from your diet. Um, but our presence in social media will continue to grow. Our business is just a little over a year where we're still building the foundation of it. But we are doing some coaching and some consulting with individuals to just help them, make the changes. But we'll be broader here soon. So keep staying tuned, and thank you for giving us the opportunity today to, be a part of your podcast. This has been great.
Yeah, thank you. And again, when I met you and my wife met you at KetoCon in Austin, Texas, it was refreshing. Again, we still need to hopefully go to these conferences and see more people who fit that diverse category. And I think the more, the merrier. And really enjoyed just the opportunity to fellowship, and it's a little bit of a just feeling, like you said, comfortable knowing that there are other people who are not only like-minded but who have benefited, and more importantly are out there trying to heal people. So thank you so much for being on this episode of the Protecting Your Nest podcast.
Thank you so much, and hi to the missus. That's my good friend. I have adopted her as a sister. So
That's right.
please be sure to say hi to Karan for me.
I will. And yeah, she's good people, and after 30 years of being together, I think I'll give you an endorsement there as well. So thank you. And as I kind of wrap up, for those who are checking out this episode, you had a chance to meet DeNitra Davis, and she's just committed. Not only to helping others, but to her own health, making sure that she could heal, be here, so she can help with her organization to help spread this healing message. It's refreshing to know that there are others out there spreading this message, and we need more people. We need you to join us. And as we mentioned earlier, this is not about selling products, videos, articles, books, and clickbait. Low carb, keto, and carnivore is really about giving people an alternative path to heal, which we've experienced personally, and we're seeing other people experience. So I appreciate DeNitra's insights as we reflected on Lisa, the nutrition professional, and her perspective, recognizing that it's probably Lisa's training that has created some fears that we have clearly seen have not played out in the lives of the people we've interacted with. And of course, personally, my hope is that if you come across a well-intentioned nutritional professional like Lisa, you would have heard alternative perspectives that will make it easier to question conventional thinking. Whether you're using low carb or keto to heal is not the point. We just hope that whatever dietary pattern you choose is getting the results that you desire. The most important of which, in my opinion, is to achieve metabolic health and to reduce that insulin resistance so you can be healthy and live the life you've always wanted to. So as we conclude this conversation, I value your time. I appreciate your engagement and only ask that you continue to take care of yourself and your family by being safe, being well, and of course, continuing to protect your nest. You've been listening to Protecting Your Nest with Dr. Tony Hampton. For more, visit drtonyhampton.com.